It all started on a quiet Sunday afternoon, one of those days where you just want to relax and not deal with drama. But of course, that wasn't in the cards for me. I had a real emergency on my hands, and when I rushed outside to take care of it, I found my only emergency exit asterisk completely blocked asterisk. And guess who was responsible? Yep, Karen from the HOA. The same Karen who always has something to say about lawn height, mailbox colors, and God forbid, leaving your trash can out for more than 5 minutes. This time, though, she crossed a serious line. I tried to explain the situation calmly at first, but in true entitled fashion, she doubled down, claiming it was against HOA policy to use that path, even during emergencies. No amount of reasoning worked. She stood there smugly, arms crossed, completely unfazed. What she didn't realize, though, was that her biggest mistake wasn't blocking the exit, it was who was watching everything unfold from the house next door. Because that house, yeah, it belongs to a judge. A real one. And they had their own history with Karen. So when things escalated and legal action came into the picture, let's just say karma showed up in a black robe and didn't hold back. But what happened next? You're not going to believe it. So here's a bit of background to really set the scene. Karen isn't just any neighbor. She's the self-appointed queen of the HOA, even though she's not actually on the board anymore. She got voted out last year after too many complaints, but that didn't stop her from patrolling the neighborhood like she's on some kind of power trip. Everyone knows her for sticking notices on doors, reporting people for minor rule violations, and basically acting like she owns the entire street. Now, the path she blocked. It's a designated emergency access route behind my building. It's clearly marked, and it's been there for years. I even confirmed it in the community's own bylaws. But Karen decided it was unsightly and parked her huge SUV right across it. No warning, no permission, just did it because she felt like it. When I asked her to move it, she started talking in circles about how she was protecting the neighborhood from misuse of private paths, whatever that means. What makes this worse is that the situation could have turned dangerous fast. Time mattered, and she wasted it. The judge next door, she didn't say a word at first, just watched everything happen. But I could tell she was taking mental notes. And trust me, when someone like her stays quiet, it's usually a storm waiting to hit. That evening, the neighborhood group chats started lighting up. People were asking who blocked the emergency path and why. A few folks even shared photos. Karen's SUV right there, smack in front of the gate with the emergency access sign clearly visible. Some neighbors tried to stay neutral, but others weren't having it. Turns out, this wasn't the first time Karen had ignored community rules when it suited her. One neighbor mentioned she once planted hedges that blocked a fire hydrant. Another said she'd threatened fines over wind chimes. Yeah, wind chimes. Meanwhile, I was still shaken. I kept thinking, what if the situation had gotten worse? What if someone had needed medical help or the fire department couldn't get in? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Not just for me, but for everyone who had to live under Karen's imaginary rule book. And yet, she still walked around like nothing happened, waving to people, pretending she was doing some kind of civic duty. The judge next door still hadn't said a word publicly, but I caught her watching again the next morning. She was watering her plants like usual, but her eyes followed Karen's every move. And when Karen started knocking on doors trying to explain her side, you could almost feel the shift in energy. Something was coming. You could just feel it. The next few days were a whirlwind. Karen, true to form, started doubling down on her actions. She posted signs around the neighborhood, claiming she was just protecting property values and maintaining order. Everyone could see through her act, though. This wasn't about rules, it was about control. The worst part, the HOA board had gone quiet. Not a peep from anyone who was supposed to be in charge. I was beginning to feel like I was the only one who cared about what was actually right. Then one afternoon, I saw the judge again. This time she wasn't alone. She was talking to another neighbor, someone who had been trying to stay out of it. They were standing by her fence, just out of earshot, but I could tell something big was happening. The judge's face was serious, and she looked like she was giving advice, but it was more than just casual conversation. She was preparing for something. I tried to ignore the growing tension, but the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that the judge was on the verge of stepping in. Meanwhile, Karen was in full-blown damage control mode. She even started making calls to the HOA board again, trying to rally support for her emergency access stance. But this time, something was different. I could feel it in the air. This wasn't just about a blocked exit anymore. The stakes had been raised. As the sun began to set, the atmosphere around the neighborhood felt charged, like a storm was brewing. I had no idea how it would end, but one thing was clear: this wouldn't just blow over. The question wasn't if Karen would face consequences, but and I was about to find out. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, I got a message that shook me to my core. It wasn't from any neighbor, or even from Karen. It was from the judge. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake, maybe a wrong number or a misdirected message. But no, she was reaching out to me directly. Her message was simple: "Meet me at my house tonight, 7 p.m. Trust me, you need to know what's coming." I had no idea what to expect, but I couldn't ignore it. What could she possibly want with me? I had always thought of her as just a quiet neighbor, someone who kept to herself, but someone who clearly had more influence than I'd realized. As the evening approached, the tension in the air grew even thicker. My mind raced with possibilities, and I couldn't help but feel like the walls were closing in. When I arrived at her house, she led me to her backyard where she was sitting by a small fire pit. It was dark now, the only light coming from the flames and a single porch light flickering behind us. She didn't waste any time. "Karen's not just being difficult," she said, her tone calm but firm. "She's been crossing lines for years, and tonight I have proof of something much bigger." I could barely process her words when she handed me a thick folder of documents. "You might want to sit down for this," she added, her gaze never leaving mine. It was the kind of moment where you feel like your whole world is about to tilt, and every decision you've ever made is suddenly in question. What had Karen really been up to all this time? As I flipped through the documents, my heart raced. Page after page, it was clear. Karen had been using her position to manipulate the HOA and bully neighbors for years. But the real shocker: she wasn't just targeting people over trivial rules. She had been pocketing funds, thousands of dollars in fees and fines from the neighborhood. It turns out she'd been orchestrating bogus fines for small, fabricated violations, and then quietly keeping the money for herself. The judge had uncovered it all after doing some digging into Karen's recent transactions, and she had the hard proof to back it up. The weight of what I was holding in my hands hit me. Karen wasn't just annoying, she was a criminal, and she had no idea that her empire of control was about to collapse. The judge had already contacted a few key people: law enforcement, local authorities, but she needed one more thing to make sure Karen couldn't wriggle her way out. That's where I came in. We agreed that I would be the one to confront Karen. I'd never been so nervous in my life. It was one thing to deal with someone who was a little too bossy, but now I was going up against someone who could lose everything. I made my way over to her house, folder in hand. When she saw me, that smug expression I'd gotten used to didn't last long. The moment I mentioned the documents and the evidence, she turned pale. But then, as if out of nowhere, Karen pulled a card I never saw coming. She leaned in and whispered, "You think you've won, but you're not the only one with secrets. The judge, too. She's not as clean as you think." Before I could process what she meant, a siren wailed in the distance, growing louder. It was a sound I hadn't expected, and it was coming for both of us. The judge wasn't the only one with something to hide. Karen wasn't the only one who had been playing the game.